Just wanted to take some time with you to walk through why I would suggest to you why the traditional critical moment response doesn't work anymore. And I want to compare it to AI. There's a whole bunch of observations around AI, and it's going to take jobs and all those other things. And I'm not interested in stoking that fear for some. But there is a uniqueness in AI that is starting to happen. And artificial intelligence can be used to efficiency, it can be used for creativity, and sometimes people who want to just use it for efficiency can become overwhelmed by it. And technology is always stoke that fear. And so reframing, I used to teach a crisis, transforming the traditional crisis response. But what I'm learning is crisis is one of those critical moments. Change, growth can be critical moments. So transforming the critical moments includes, as I said before, includes crisis, but it's not limited to it. It can be change, it can be growth. And this, I would propose, is the exact same conversation that's happening with AI. But have you noticed what is happening when people use AI? Why is it sometimes we feel better after using artificial intelligence? You know, people come back and they've said to me, well, that kind of feels good. That was helpful. And, you know, I'm inspired or I'm encouraged or I learned and some of those other things. Well, there's a behavioral observation that I'm seeing as a consistent pattern in using AI. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this, and this is available at the end, a star handout, and it's STTAR on purpose. But I want to walk through, and why is it some of us actually feel better when we're talking to a machine than when we're talking to a human being at work? You see, I would suggest that the real question is not whether AI is going to replace humans or whether it's going to replace us. The real question is why people feel respected by a machine more than their leaders or their peers. You see, this is not a technology question. It's a leadering question. It's a leadering problem. You know, one of the things that I've learned over 30 plus years of doing crisis intervention work is the event is never the real crisis. The reactions are. And it's the same thing that's happened is culture is not built by team building and posters on a wall or brochures or things on a website. Culture is built by those momentary conversations that, especially during difficult moments, but it's built by those everyday conversations. And what I call those critical moments, those difficult moments, is the hot water tea bag experiment. If you want to find out what's important to a person or an organization, put them in hot water, because what's inside always leaks out. And so when we are dealing with critical moments, be it crisis, change, or growth, how are we responding to normal human beings' normal reactions? And so I want to introduce the traditional, if you will, the critical moment response. And it's really simple. There's a critical moment. So a stick in the spokes, if you will. Something happens that upsets the norm and the everyday stuff. Then there is what happens in most organizations, there's an intervention. You know, EAP gets called or peer support team gets called or some of those kinds of things happen. But then what happens after that is people feel better in the moment. Don't get me wrong, they're very helpful. But then after the dust subsides, about a month, 2 months later, People still walloped, got the Charlie horse from the event. They're still trying to find the stride while everybody else is carried on with normal. And that's where, you know, the intervention starts to subside. And so organizations and, oh, we need to do a leadership development program. Oh, we need to do a program on mental health and well-being. Oh, we need to do this program on, and there's a never-ending, I call it transfer of information, but there's a never-ending series of programs that's just kind of a glorified Groundhog Day where doing another program, but what starts to happen is cynicism grows because people are hearing the talk, but they're not seeing the walk. And what comes out of that is that final phase of dissension. That is that phase where the walk and the talk don't match. And cynicism grows and people start looking over the fence, and this will show up, this dissension shows up in conversations around recruitment or retention, or, you know what, these two people don't work well together. So what we need to do is dealing with difficult conversations or productive conflict resolution. So we do another program, but we still got the dissension, and those pieces happen. And you know the thing that is happening with AI? And I wrote some of the quotes because I use it to brainstorm with somebody. And hey, good morning, John. Look forward to working with you. And some of the other comments. This is solid material. I think what you're dealing with is not the content issue, but the visual flow issue. And so let me walk alongside with you and let's help make this land. And then if we correct AI, we don't get that normal reaction, defensive one. The AI responds with, you're right to call me out on that. I have not honored what you were describing, what you were talking about. I will correct that and immediately work on that. How many of us don't want to be greeted that way? Or in a positive wording, how many of us would love to be greeted that way? Hey, good to see you. What are we going to be working on today? Or, well, yeah, no, that's not going to land. So how do we make this work? How do we make this land? What do you want to achieve today? What are we going to work on today? And I'm here when you need me if I'm stepping away or if you're stepping away from AI. AI might not be replacing people or leaders or jobs. What AI might be actually doing is modeling the behavior around critical moment response. Because there are two outcomes from the traditional critical moment response. And what happens is one becomes what I call the accountability culture. And another way to word this, and I'm not going to spell it all out for you, but the accountability culture is that culture which is the P culture. You know, the productivity, the performance, the protocols, the procedures, the policies. The list goes on. And let's not forget the paperwork, because everything's about performance improvement, performance improvement. The other side of that conversation is what I call the very culture, because it's values anchored, so that values encouraged allow responsibility to take the initiative. And organizations consistently look for initiative from people, but what they're doing is they're trying to get it from the accountability side. It's not going to happen because this is risk adverse. And so in this model, in an accountability culture, the next piece that gets added here is what's called the institutionalized. And that is where policies and procedures and those things grow. And please don't misinterpret that. I am not saying that policies are not valuable. However, policies and procedures don't tend to motivate people. Values do. Values are the source of our motivation. They are the source of, well, think about it. How does one evaluate when we're not sure on what our values are? In critical moment response, a normal pattern of progression is really simple. Critical moment, intervention. But what would happen if we were modeling the AI behavior? Kind of do the, wow, that didn't go according to plan. So what can we work on first? I am so glad you've reached out. And if I get corrected on something I shouldn't have said or shouldn't have done, instead of being defensive in the reaction, say, you're right to call me on that. I apologize. What would be most helpful for you right now? And the process that I use is called shift wrap, and SHIFTRAP, and I'll include the resource at the end. Just walks through the 5 pieces. Shepherds, a very different leadership model than ranchers. So shepherds and ranchers. Harness are the core values. Alignment. Intervention, what's the plan when the plan doesn't work? And as somebody once said to me, no plan ever survives first contact. And then focus, what does success mean? And then team, are the right people in the right places? Let's make this really practical. And I wonder maybe if the reason that AI is growing is it's modeling that values-anchored approach. It's taking the initiative. It's showing the appreciation. Good to meet with you. Good to hear from you. Look forward to working with you on this project. In a critical moment response, those are exactly the behaviors that humans need. We don't need somebody to bang on our head of the woulda, coulda, shoulda. What we actually need is somebody who will say, what can I do to help? Transforming that traditional critical moment response means we have to change the thinking from pasting on a program, pasting on an intervention, which is the accountability, pasting on those policies and procedures, but coming alongside or coming underneath people to support them. And I wonder, maybe AI is helping us learn how to support people through critical moments. So I'm going to give you the shift wrap, but I also want to give you that STAR resource. And it's a simple tool: situation, thinking, tension, action, result. But what would happen if you walk through conversations around situations and wrote out what is your thinking, but then what's the rub here? What's the tension here? And then what can we do? Because the traditional critical moment response, all these pieces are here in both responses, accountability and values anchored. The difference is values anchored are supporting people, accountability are ensuring that the boxes get checked. I wonder, in an accountability culture, survive becomes the goal. In a values-anchored culture, thrive becomes the outcome. Are you willing to transform your traditional critical moment response? Stop doing whack-a-mole or Groundhog Day. Rethink the thinking, and let's learn from something like AI. Let's connect with the person to help them thrive. Look forward to connecting with you very soon.